There is a shortage of fuel, there is a shortage of food, there is a shortage of essential items, and there is a shortage, an acute shortage even of medicines, and that is extremely alarming. We will speak to, just take a look at the queues. These queues extend, and rather disciplined, very disciplined people standing in a line here, and that queue, just look around, it extends all the way from one end of the road to the other end of the road, and beyond that it encircles this entire block and more than 10 kilometers. People standing in a queue for a week. I want to cut across now to India Today's Ashutosh Mishra joining us from Ground Zero for more on the story. Ashutosh, the government today here in Sri Lanka came up with a plan of rationing petrol. How does that work to benefit citizens as the government claims? How does this plan work?
Well, Gaurav, this became a need of the hour. In fact, since, as you rightly mentioned, there have been a shortage of fuel, petrol, diesel, even the cooking gas, and this has been happening for last 6 months. What the government heard is that over the last few weeks, there is sudden, hoarding of essential and also the black marketing of fuel and diesel. In fact, we are also one of the worst affected. When we had to travel from the airport, we have to pay at least 4 times higher than the usual taxi rate. The reason the taxi driver said that we are buying from the black market because there is no availability of the fuel. So the government's idea is that one vehicle, one time fuel in a week, and for that they have to register through a web portal announced by the government, where you have to put the chassis number, your driving license number, and one national ID card number. So according to that, they will issue a QR code, and that QR code will be scanned at the petrol pump. So this will prevent hoarding and black marketing, and that perhaps the need, because now suddenly in last few weeks what we are seeing that the shipment and consignment, whether they are buying it oil from other countries, also we are hearing that Russia is also likely to supply fuel to Sri Lanka under the credit line. India is already, sending one after one another metric tons of the fuel, including diesel and petrol, through the island. But for now, the concern remains a proper distribution. At the same time, let me tell you, today only I just visited some 50 kilometers here from here at the eastern coast called Nigambo, which is the dominated area of the fishermen community. First 3 months, they could not even sail in the ocean because there were no diesel. And since skyrocketing prices of the essential, also the fuel prices declining, the currency value, clearly their entire business has jeopardized. So now one of the key factors which contributes significantly to the Sri Lankan economy, they require a push from the government, and perhaps this is one of such scheme where they will prevent the leakage, the leakage of the fuel, which is very essential at the moment in this country.
Stay with me for a moment, Ashutosh. Those are very pertinent points that people in Sri Lanka are grappling with as we speak. But let me take this question to Francis. Francis, you said you were standing in a queue for a week.
I slept in my three-wheeler. I have to eat from markets. Actually, more than the money I spent on petrol, I spent a lot of money eating from markets.
How much petrol did you get for your auto rickshaw?
Only 2,500 rupees petrol is allowed for trishaws, 1,500 rupees for three-wheelers, and 8,000 rupees for cars. So actually they should give us more petrol, because we are doing a job. This is our only income. We had to pay finance out of money we get. We have children to look after.
But tell me this, now that the government says that there will be a QR code that will be issued, you have to register online to get fuel, so that there is no black marketing of fuel. Why are you upset with that plan?
My dear, he's crazy. That is only good for the educated people. Most of the three-wheel drivers are not educated. They don't use smartphones. So how can they get into that app? Right? So it's good for people who are driving cars around, who are having smartphones in their hand. They can always get into the system. And
do you have a smartphone? Will you be able to?
I'm just using a small phone. So how can I get into the system with a small phone like this? The only thing they should do is check on our license and insurance, and issue us a small notebook, so that all the time when we go to pump juice, the garage should have a seal, and write down the amount of petrol they issue.
What do you have tourists who's taking your auto rickshaw, and how much have the fares gone up? I mean, on a normal day, how much would a fare be? How much is it now?
Normally, when we had petrol in the fare was only 80, 100. The first kilometer is 100 rupees, and after that go on 80 rupees. But now people are charging different prices because we are going through a very hard time.
We're going through a hard time is what Francis says, and trust me, he's not the only one. There is such an acute crisis of fuel in this country. Because of no fuel, there is no food. Because food from rural areas or from other areas cannot reach Colombo. So there's a shortage of food. There is a shortage of essential commodities. So restaurants are shut. There are a number of restaurants on this road. Those restaurants are all shut. Schools are shut. Colleges are shut. People once again are being forced to work from home. As far as the tourism industry is concerned, Ashutosh, that's virtually collapsing. So first you had the 2019 Easter bombing, then you had COVID. Just when Sri Lanka's hotel industry and tourism industry thought it will revive these beautiful beaches all around, not a single tourist, because there is no fuel, there is no food, and there is insecurity, Ashutosh.
Absolutely. When there is uncertainty and stability in a country, the tourists would never prefer to enter any countries like that, no matter how heavenly it is. And remember, when I traveled in the month of April, when it all escalation started on the street, there were 14 to 15 hours power cut. For example, the one hotel that I am staying at the moment, they have 92 rooms, one luxurious hotel in the heart of Colombo with 90 rooms. At the moment, have only 3 occupancy, only 3 guests, which includes me. So that is the situation, and 2 others are not the tourists, but some business entrepreneurs who have come from different regions of Colombo. Subsequently, because there is no cooking gas supply, as you rightly mentioned, that many restaurants have totally been shut. These hotels, amongst them, these restaurants are now using the booths, that is to cook food. Subsequently, this is the one portion we are seeing only in the Colombo, the capital city. Now imagine the gravity and the scale of this disaster, the economic disaster in the rural part, particularly in the Negombo where I travel this day. Mostly the hotels are shut down. There is barely tourists any walked around, and tourism contributes significantly, and that perhaps the reason why this nation should really be worried. Unless there is certainty, unless there is a proper government working, and when this all protests stop, now the new government need to send out a message they are ready to welcome the tourists. But the biggest issue is the crisis and the chaos that is happening, because for a distance where you have to pay 100 rupees, we are forced to pay 1000 rupees. How come tourists can even afford, who prefer to choose Sri Lanka and stay for a longer? So these are some basic and very basic when it comes to the tourism, and that this country at the moment has failed to address. And unless it is addressed, these grievances are addressed, proper mechanism.
Ashutosh, stay with me. Stay with me.